you?
I'm good. How are you?
Just made it, so you're not marked tardy.
Okay.
Joe's kind of a stickler. He makes me mark absences.
3 tardies and you have to come in with a note. And donuts.
Yeah, there you go.
Donuts will go down very well right now. Even just a cookie.
What about Michelle? Is she around? I feel like I haven't heard from her in a long time.
She was here last month. I exchanged a couple of emails with her. She didn't say she wasn't going to be available tonight, so.
Did you get many responses to your meeting invite?
I get some of them. I don't know that everybody does. Laura, you're always great, and Elliot, and you do also. So a lot of people do, some people don't. Joe doesn't like to get into the email riffraff, so he doesn't hit send them.
Okay.
I know he gets them.
Yeah. Did anybody else say they were coming?
The folks who said they weren't coming were the ones that replied. So unless people tell me they're not going to be here,
Yeah.
I tend to assume they're going to be here, unless I get some of those last minute emails. I try to send my email. Rachel sometimes gets stuck in traffic.
And there's a good chance of that today.
I just saw Rachel. She lives like 3 houses from me, so.
And she's...
So
Not to throw her under the bus or
Not to throw her under the bus.
you're putting her into the no excuse category.
Something else, maybe, or maybe...
Could be an important
I know, I
TV
had
show.
something last month. So maybe
Needs to watch the local news.
that's the danger when you live close to people.
I make no bones about it. Sometimes I just space things out.
That's why I put everything in the calendar.
2 historical commission meetings ago, I just was sitting around all Friday morning at home enjoying myself and said, oh, there was someplace I was supposed to be.
And you got mad at your phone, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh, and why didn't you remind me? And my wife had gotten to the point where she knows it's not on the calendar, that there's a 50-50.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah, I've gotten so dependent on that.
It's the world we live in.
Yeah. I know, I'm sure there are brain cells that are just wasting away as a result, but on the other hand,
I'm gonna
I am
repurpose me.
more
Some
punctual.
something else.
Right. I'm less likely to forget my meetings.
Right.
So, it'd be good with bed. Bed would be good. Martin, did you send documents we were supposed to review?
No.
Okay, good.
Did you want some? I try not to. There's occasionally I kind of want to call it homework, but the commitment for serving on one of these is to ideally not have, rarely or infrequently have, take-home kind of stuff. But if there's anybody who's interested in doing additional extra on a project, on kind of case by case, that's great. Like Kimberly's volunteered to help with some of the PACE information, so she's doing some stuff offline. But the last couple of months, I had sent the questionnaire information from SurveyMonkey, and hopefully everybody's had a chance to go through some of that. But there wasn't anything specific for this month, other than just reviewing some of the stuff in the last month on the trash scope, the waste services scope from the board dialogue that happened on that a couple of weeks ago. Everybody's seen it, so it didn't make sense to send it out again.
Yeah, I read it once. I think I only read it the first time you sent it.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, when you said it again, I was like,
I hope you want it.
Congratulations on your award. Sorry I missed it.
Yeah, you usually there.
I had a conflict. I had Rockies tickets that night. And it wasn't raining.
It wasn't raining. It's the way it looked here.
Not at Rocket, not at Coors Field. In fact, it was hot and sunny. It was, my son got me him this 10-game Tuesday night package. We're so far, we've had 2 rainouts and one, oh, let's not go. It's too miserable. And so last week was really good.
It's crazy weather. Well, what's all that yellow wire? Is that for you got a ton of yellow wire, for cat. You can barely see it. What's that from?
It's for the grading work at the town center.
That's a lot. Taking a lot of equipment.
Yeah, that's the point.
You see it?
Yeah, there is a...
I'm surprised, I didn't think it was supposed to be staged up there for the whole world.
It's actually not a staging area.
It is not a staging area, that's why I'm surprised.
You must see it.
Yeah, oh, yes.
Yeah, the folks that live over by Joe can see it. When there's a staging area constructed, then they'll go to it. So they gotta build the staging area.
Wasn't-
And they need the equipment.
It wasn't so bad my seeing it, was my wife seeing it.
So they're gonna start putting roads in?
Staging area and then start building construction road. Yeah.
And you gotta-
Yeah.
Roads have to be coming in time for the ice rink. Because the ice rink is not progressing too quick in the last month and a half either.
The weather?
Yeah. I did see the crane move a few times in the last couple of weeks.
Well, please do.
Yeah, it's been busy.
I wish you did, just, yeah.
Yeah. Pictures as they go.
Laura and I were not a.
Develop an archive or a history of construction and a lot that up really quickly.
Really touched right now.
That kind of building should go up fast and see, it's the fine work that takes a lot of time.
Yeah, I still do.
But yeah, Jim, congratulations again. So Joe mentioned it, so in case you hadn't heard, Jim was named as a surprise at the Chamber's annual dinner, the volunteer of the year, or the superior.
I was wondering when,
She's very achiever.
I was wondering when that was gonna happen, because if it didn't happen soon, I was gonna have to nominate you.
The best part was that it was a surprise.
Well,
That's the whole point, it is supposed to be a surprise.
I don't know.
Is it all?
Yeah.
Well, no, it can't, well, generally they have to get people there.
They usually have a different devise of ways to get people there.
Yeah. But anyway, my wife was the presenter, because she presents the volunteer work
Oh, yes.
to the Ski Corps. So she said, oh, you gotta come to the, I usually go with her, otherwise I don't really would be there. So that was a loose. It worked pretty well.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So we don't have a quorum still, do we?
We do not. Joe let me know he's not going to be here. He's out of town again, so he's opened his schedule to free up a little bit in the coming months. And then Aaliyah let me know that she's got another month this month with some convoluted schedules. And then Corinne is not going to be here.
Tony's just walking in, it looks like.
Oh, good. Hey, Tanya.
Hi.
Hi, Tanya. Hi, Mark.
Well, I would like to, just since Tanya's here, let's go ahead and get this meeting called to order again. Yeah? Because I would like to get out of here a little bit earlier, by 6:30.
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to keep this to a reasonable level, a reasonable time duration. Understanding that it's summer, everybody's got a lot going on, and the rain just makes everything kind of heavy.
This means we have to be more at the mercy of driving children around.
Yeah. And change-
I tried to get wet thing, I had to pay for it because of laundry, so I'm not doing that anymore. Every time we went to do something else came up.
For shredding? We did it at 8. I didn't do the shredding. I did 8 bucks.
Jim gone east at all this summer?
They were still really nice.
They are.
You know, they had a set
Easter
room, just like,
meeting
it
stays in
seemed
Madrid.
everything was fine.
Is it?
Where my daughter is.
Is she?
Yeah.
I'm flying to Madrid in September.
Oh, really?
Tell her I'll be there for breakfast.
3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, we just vacation deep.
Yeah, we're going to, we have a timeshare that we swapped for,
Do you know where that is?
my wife lived there for a year, her junior year at college. And we've been there several times. So,
It's a great place.
yeah, it is.
Party.
We're just gonna be there a couple of days. Well, that's nothing. Both my 2 older kids did a semester abroad in Sevilla. That's party. Spring semester in southern Spain is just party.
Right. That's incredible. Never seen anything like it. They never stop.
And they start late in the day and they go late and it's,
Then they stop for coffee at 5, they start again, they go till midnight to 2 in the morning.
so what is she doing there?
She teaches English
My daughter got me
in Madrid.
here,
And
my
she
daughter's
lives
home
right
in
in
the summer. She's going to
Alessandria, was
Mexico.
Center City.
We do not
Nice
reserve a
area,
car for her
and,
while she is in Mexico.
Teaches in the suburbs just on the outskirts of Madrid.
The car sharing?
fourth graders, that kind of. It's a good program.
How long has she been there and going to be there?
She's been there since August, and we were over in,
We always have
right around
spare
Easter
cars.
week, we were over there.
That's a nice time to go.
In another state.
And then,
yeah.
She comes back July 15th, and goes back September 15th, or early September.
Yeah, it's a cool city, it really is. Lots and lots of culture, lots of things to
Lots of
do.
surprises though, too.
Yeah,
And we've had
well, over the years, you see,
The food's bland. I never went out to that.
yeah, it's, Spanish food is not Mexican food. It's way different. Yeah,
I find it rather insufficient. Oh, that's too funny.
but,
Oh, very friendly.
people get out of there in the summer and go other places because it gets
Yeah.
very hot and dry.
It's a nice.
But there's actually,
It's kind of old now.
right now.
So it's the same car for all three? Same car for all three, it's 25 now.
Oh, yeah.
It's much better than I ever thought it was, really.
Oh, she could have seen that.
He's 20.
It's on one from the, one of the big.
Yeah.
He's at CU. Okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna,
Not really at home, but
we think we have not been able to
His summer job is in Little.
contact the family that she lived
He
with
doesn't have access to the rec center.
the last couple of times. So we're thinking, still kind of, because of the Spanish Civil War, it was
So I
three
see him a lot.
older women and their father that she lived with. And
He is.
there was one left. She may have gone back to the village that they all came from.
Funny now, because everybody under like 35 is nobody knows. They have millions of programs that teaching English.
He doesn't so good.
Okay, so let's redo that. Now we'll officially call the meeting to order. Sorry. You're fine. All right, so, do we have any public comment? No?
He's got nothing.
It's got nothing. All right, so if we could just cover new business and updates now.
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. Just for the good of the recording, I'm just going to announce everybody's name. That's okay. So Martinville Town staff is here, Tanya Sun is here, Laura Small is here, Ann Shanahan, Michelle Horton, trustee liaison Joe Sorelli, and serving as a citizen member of the Rock Creek HOA Board of Directors, Jim Payne is here. Agenda items. So some of the regular items and then a couple of updates for the group. Try and go through this pretty quickly. So the document shredding and electronics recycling event was held in cooperation with Guardian Storage over the latter part of May, and there were great totals. We just got them. So it was open a little bit longer, as you recall from some of the dialogue over the last couple of months. Guardian was able to have the folks from DataSafe provide this service for a longer duration, at least 3 or 4 days longer, maybe up to a week longer than it was last year. And the totals were 10,483 pounds of paper and almost 3,000 pounds of electronic waste, which was a good order of magnitude higher.
How much again?
10,483 pounds, so 10.5 paper and almost 3,000 pounds of e-waste, electronic items. That's great. Which was a great total. It was a great total. Folks from DataSafe said that was one of the most successful events in the area.
So is Guardian actually paying them to do that?
I don't know the details of the arrangement between the two entities. I think DataSafe has a relationship with a number of facilities around here, but I'm not sure of the nature of their agreement. They try to work with the communities and have a presence in several, and they work with other Guardian facilities, like the one in Westminster as well. But I'm sorry, Joe, I don't know.
I was just curious, that's a big deal.
Is there any indication, or do they have a sense of whether that was mostly Superior people, or, they do business enough, were they getting people from outside,
The sign-in sheet, so Jim had a question about where the folks who were dropping off materials for the e-waste and shred event were from. The long story short is that the sign-in sheets indicated that indicated names but didn't necessarily indicate where they were from. So we were trying to track the number of people and tried to have a decent indication of where they came from, but we didn't receive that level of detail.
Yeah, not like we can ask them to do that, but maybe make a mental note, like say, hey, you should put the zip code on, just curious where everybody's coming from.
Or maybe actual town, since we share a zip code.
Yeah.
With
Well, I was just curious if it made sense to you to take those numbers, the electronics anyway, with our numbers from this Superior event, whether those are additive or whether it's not relevant because they're not all from Superior.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of both, because the folks who come to the hard to recycle event are also not residents. So it's, maybe it's a similar proportion.
I would just be curious because, kind of exactly what you're saying, but also more so, as I mentioned, that day that we did that this year wasn't a good day because it was a long weekend, so it's like I'm wondering how many more they're capturing with stuff like that. Like, I of course meant to go during the 3 weeks, but I never did.
There's always another year.
Yeah, feel free to leave your stuff into the garage.
Just a big garbage bag full of stuff.
Well, I don't remember whether we have received a number from the town's event, the Heart and Recycling, compared to this one.
Oh, we did that last time.
Oh, we did?
So it was pretty comparative, you said.
Okay.
No, you're good, Sonia, don't worry.
No, you're fine. So, we track the totals and try to track where people where they're coming from for the hard to recycle and household.
Well, in our case, because we're Lorraine, we do not actually have all the paperwork, but in terms of the amount of, electronics that recycled,
Yeah, the net totals that are collected are assembled by the folks at Boulder County with their staff and with their
Right.
vendors, the contract staff and the contractors that they have help coordinate the event for them, and we haven't received their
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant. So we haven't got that number yet.
No, but like Michelle mentioned, we had nearly 180 participants, which was close to last year's.
Oh,
Which was great for such suboptimal weather.
right, yeah. Was,
I don't know how the volumes compare, but the attendance was in the same order of magnitude.
Oh,
It's a great
okay.
news.
all right.
Next on the list, the Boulder County Sustainability Grant Award. So like I've mentioned a couple of times, I'm going to just kind of have some reminder items on these updates. The county commissioners approved the grant award for the town to install the dual recycling and waste cans at town park facilities. And the number of the cans have been ordered and arrived, and we started the installations. It'll take probably a month or so to get them all installed. We've gotten a good start, so that was great news. Next, Boulder County has the PACE program that we've talked about. So Leah Yancey with the Boulder County Commissioner's Office in the Energy Sustainability sent me an updated timeline. And it is pushed out a little bit. So as the committee will remember, we talked about how the Boulder County PACE program was going to have a timeline that included outreach over a few months, trying to get some businesses registered and participating over a couple of months, and then have a chance to celebrate some of the success stories in the fall. They have a new staff member, I believe, who's going to be taking this on, and the timeline is pushed out a little bit. And Leah let me know that she talked to Kim. I was hoping Kimberly would be here tonight to give us an update, maybe a little bit on where she's had a chance to work on some of the logistics for this, but she's planning to meet Leah in the next few weeks and go over some outreach ideas. So you haven't seen a lot of publicity yet that's specific to Superior, but Kimberly's planning to work on that with Leah over the next few weeks to a month or so. Next, the bulk item waste pickup alternatives. Just a reminder here, like we talked about over the last couple of months, the town has posted the information on our website and has included it in e-blasts and in our newsletters, and will continue to do so. It's still on the webpage. So yeah, curbside composting options is off, as well as discarding bulk items. Still on our main news page, and we'll leave that there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call, because it's funny, now that people are getting outside a little bit into the weather, I've seen a lot of people asking about it. I mean, it's unfortunate that's not so obvious to them to go check their local town's website, but they'll get there.
Yeah, sometimes it just kind of takes a cycle to try and get in front of people's eyeballs, but we'll continue to have it here. It's on this news page, it was on this cover page, so maybe we'll put it back here for another round. It's critical vibes is still on this.
Has there been a lot of feedback from the public about the canceled service? Or has there not
I've
been?
gotten maybe a half dozen calls.
Oh, okay, so not bad then.
Okay, just a few.
So that's the folks that got to me, maybe the same number, called just the front desk,
Yeah.
general questions. Not overwhelming, but there's definitely been some folks who were, puzzled and had some questions and wanted to know about different alternatives. And I've referred a number of people, and the folks who serve at our front desk here have referred a number of people to a number of folks who have called or emailed to the information that's been posted on the website with the different alternatives for the bulk item disposal.
It's tricky, because this is kind of out of the realm. I think it caught us all off guard, even though we knew it was out of the budget. I mean, is there maybe some recommendation that we should make a note of in our heads to make to the board about maybe doing 2 different weekends then, if they got rid of one bulk thing? I don't know. There's just got to be something else we can add for people to haul locally instead of going in as a replacement. I don't know. Maybe everybody could ponder about that. Because, as I was saying, even though I forgot to take all my papers in, I did actually load up our truck and hauled a bunch of stuff into Resource and EcoCycle and Boulder, and then of course I came back with a bunch of stuff because of what they wouldn't accept. Even though I'd looked on the website before.
And it says that they do accept.
Well, some of it's kind of confusing, I'm not gonna lie, you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm like, ooh, is this classified as that, or, So, like, I had Granite, and it wasn't big enough for them. Just stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't, it's like, what do? I've got to go to the building place and see if they'll take it, But there were some other things like that, so maybe I'd even be willing to go somewhere locally and pay, instead of having to do that if it was a very clear, concise list. So it'd be great to see if we could kind of push the town to bring something back.
Sure.
Even if not
Projecting
like
a little
what it
bit
was.
for the next, second action item or discussion.
Okay, good.
End of the budget.
That sounds awesome.
Maybe we can come back to that then. But the discard options list has been a good resource for a number of folks that I have talked to. Maybe the half dozen or so that were unhappy with it, and then maybe another half dozen or so that were pleasantly surprised to have some good options that were here local, that were available as alternatives. The compost pickup service, the coordinated promotion with the Rock Creek Master Homeowners Association is continuing. I haven't heard how many folks have actually subscribed.
And get our numbers up, should I ask?
Yeah, it didn't occur to me to think about that. Myself.
I owe you some data anyway, so I'll get some.
Yeah. Maybe if we let's compare notes.
I can provide, I'll see if, when we provide the monthly data, which I owe you, I think, because we canceled the meeting, which is why I didn't. But when we provide that monthly data, I'll see if I can get, the counting of how many each month, how many people are on the compost.
Yeah, I'll ask as well. So Jim and I can follow up a little bit on just what the registration numbers are between the homeowners, waste customers, and then I'll touch base with them on the town's waste customers. But the coordinated promotion seems to be, have been well received. I've heard from a few folks that have gotten me through either email or voicemail that are happy to see, number one, that it exists, like we talked about, just getting the word out, just having a consistent message with the HOA, that the service is available for a subscription if anybody, a resident who's either a town resident or a member of the Rock Creek HOA has this service available. So again, just generally positive response, just keeping this on the radar for the group. Committee reappointment schedule. So I've talked a few times over the last couple of months, and I want to give everybody a heads up that Rachel, Ann, and Tanya were all eligible for reappointment this year. So I've had a chance to confer or email each of you individually. And Tanya is interested in being considered for reappointment. which will be on the town board's agenda on June 22nd. And then Rachel and Ann have let me know that they're interested in stepping down. So with a heavy heart, we'll recognize that, but I wanted to note that for the group. So there will be a couple of vacancies going forward with this group, and then Tanya, just a heads up that the reappointment will be on the board's agenda for the 22nd of June. And then Corinne also let me know that with her graduation from high school and moving to Tacoma, Washington for college, that she will be needing to step down from the group as well. So we'll have a couple of vacancies going forward.
Okay, do you know where she's going to college?
What's more in Tacoma, Washington?
Yeah, University of Puget Sound.
You know, that's funny, Joe. I mean, the same question for me earlier, and it didn't occur to me to follow up. She sent me an email just an hour or two ago.
Yeah, I think it's Puget Sound because my son was accepted there, but just like the price tag at CU better. Oh, we liked the price tag.
There's value in that, right? So again, thanks for the responses, just keeping everybody on the same page in terms of schedule. We will miss Ann and Rachel, but thank you, Tanya, for your willingness to serve again for another term. Not noted on here, I meant to include on the agenda the newsletter articles. You know, as we've talked about, we have kind of a rotating cycle of newsletter articles that are related to environmental or sustainability-related topics in the last couple of months. We've been pushing as hard as we can the compost service that's available, and then the bulk item discard options. And I had a note as a newsletter item to add garden in a box as an update item. I think it was in the newsletter a month or two ago, and we'll have that again for the July newsletter. So we'll continue to promote some of the ongoing programs and look to add the garden in a box as a reminder to folks through the newsletter and also on the news page on the website.
What is that a, you're talking about on the RCAC, where are you talking, in the Superior newsletter?
Yes, the resource, Center for Resource Conservation runs a Garden in a Box program that we've hosted here and had promotions over the years. And even had some here as giveaways for some events in the past and coupons, and have done some promotional work with them in years past. And we wanted to make sure and try to publicize that as much as we can. And they've done a good job this year getting the word out. And I've seen it in different media, and I wanted to make sure that we had included it in ours.
So for the garden in the box, for example, do we have some media that we can sort of recycle and reuse? Okay.
Yeah, the folks from CRC do a great job packaging media items and having newsletter information in different places. And I think I saw something from the Energy Sustainability Office that had come originally from CRC. So yes, they're very well networked, and they do a great job of getting their marketing materials out. I need to remember to include it in ours going forward. So that was it for the new business and update items.
Okay, so then I guess we move on to the discussion about the town board dialogue on the waste collection services agreement.
The town board, during the May 26th meeting, had a great dialogue on the waste collection services agreement and the scope to be included in the RFP process that we talked about over the last several months. So to kind of, not necessarily close the loop, but to bring this element to a close of defining what's going to be in the scope. The board was interested in including the single hauler monthly per household trash and recycling service on the same day each week. We discussed 3 options for them last month during this committee's meeting, and then made a recommendation to bring all of those forward to the board. Where they landed was having weekly 96-gallon trash service and weekly 96-gallon recycling cart service. I didn't capture in here one additional follow-up item that the board was interested in, which was having the additional option for, what's the word for it? Individual resident choice of different sizes of carts. So that will be one ad that will be included.
Okay.
So it was great to have this group's recommendation and have a chance to go over some of the details with this group and then make a recommendation to the board for their consideration. So out of the options that were considered, the board honed in on some of the primary areas that they came up both out of the dialogue between the members of this group and then also out of the questionnaire, which really I think focused on the level of satisfaction with the current service levels, and then also having the opportunity to increase the recycling service. And then also the third item that isn't noted here, I didn't include that in this summary, which was having the option either as an inclusion item in the agreement or a potential additional fee item to have a choice of cart size. Like we've talked about in the past, introducing any variability to the operation and the supplies that a waste hauler has to keep on hand to try and deliver can sometimes increase the cost. So that'll be something that'll be an important option to consider in trying to put together a contract for next year, in determining the value of that, whether or not the price goes up, or the level of service goes up, or how to do that. So we'll look forward to some additional dialogue on that in the fall. So we'll plan on posting the RFP in the next month or so, and then have something hopefully for the board to consider maybe a month or so after that. So definitely by the fall, the board will have some opportunities to look at the options and what they cost and determine whether or not to move forward. This is a fairly regulated and legislated service, so it has some very specific requirements for how the RFP is posted and distributed, and then how the contract is drafted and forwarded for the board's consideration. So it takes a little longer. It has a more formal RFP process. So that's kind of the short version. And then also included were the bulk item pickup service, having an idea of what a cost per item would be for a bulk item event. Like Michelle mentioned earlier, having an alternative for that. And then yard waste pickup service, the cost per item and cost per yard. Like we talked about, these are options that are available now through both the town's contract and I understand also through the HOA's contract. And then the optional subscription service for having the organic pickup. Similar to what the current level of service is now, to have a subscription seasonal service for 96-gallon every other week service that is billed directly to the resident by the contractor. So those are the main elements, and then they add alt items, the kind of the optional items to get a price for, and then determine whether or not would be included as additions to the base bid. Would be townwide curbside bulk item pickup service once per year that would be coordinated through the town, and have that cost separate from providing the trash and recycling collection. So in addition to the bid schedule, that would be the primary items, the 1 through 4 above, an option to do a one-time bulk item pickup and what that would cost and have that be completely separate, not a contingency item for the contract. And then the second alt item, having a once-a-year yard waste pickup, branches and leaves pickup once in November. And again, same idea, having literally an optional item that could be picked up at the town's discretion if the board were so interested in doing that. So those are the main elements. Joe, I didn't know if you wanted to, I didn't ask you before the meeting if you wanted to talk about any elements of the board's dialogue on this.
Well, I think what was important in the dialogue was, along with the recommendations, was the survey results. There was some notice of, I'm trying to remember the inconsistency that somebody latched onto, that people were happy with the service, but then not happy with it. There was not a connection there.
Yeah, they were like okay with it, but felt like it was lacking.
I wasn't here, but I watched it.
Yeah.
The discrepancy was over the, trying to decipher the intent of
Yeah.
recycling every week or every other.
Yeah.
Just contradictory feedback.
And generally the board kind of felt like keeping the RFP simple is good, and hopefully it'll, and that'll make it easier for the bidding and probably improve the cost too. So if you have too many variables that a bidder has to provide, he's gonna cover himself. So that's my recollection, which is as good as I can do after 2 or 3 weeks.
It has been a couple of weeks, so yeah, that's, just to echo Joe's sentiments a little bit, the focus on simplicity, but so many variables like this group has looked at over the last couple of months and what service options are available that other jurisdictions have looked at, trying to assemble a contract that made sense for their individual community and what the majority of their folks were interested in. our board really did want to start with the foundation of just really trying to keep it simple. If there's a relatively high satisfaction level with where we're at now, is there a way to keep it simple, have a high amount of dollar value, and then introduce some element of choice for folks who would like to have a smaller bin, which really did seem to come through in the questionnaire results. And then, like Jim, like you mentioned,
So if there's a
difference
one,
between weekly and bi-weekly might be a little bit.
Oh, I appreciate it. I would drive me nuts to live somewhere where I had to remember which week the recycling went out.
the other thing is going to be, well, yeah, it's how many days a week are we going to have trucks going around? That's something we want to watch. But I'm looking at that last option of the one-time branches and leaves pickup service in mid-November, trying to figure out how I'm going to get my leaves down to Original Town. Might be easier just to take it to the recycling. Just to sell it.
Yeah, but we'll have to be checking IDs if that ends up being included in the contract.
So I do have a naive question. Like in the future, will it possible for, when HOA renew the contract, the town would bundle together with the HOA and to have a better negotiation power?
Well, that was discussed at considerable length in a recent joint meeting between the HOA board and the town board.
Okay.
Like you guys do with the board, we had a work session over dinner. It was probably the major. Oh,
Directional. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so that was discussed at the joint board meeting with the town and the HOA at some length. And there's really no way to do that because we can't subject ourselves to all of the bid requirements, the RFPs and so forth that the town is legally required to do. And so it'd be almost unmanageable to do it that way. But we do address it by working closely, and the town could decide, and when it comes time to make a decision, you all could recommend, and the town could decide to go to a different vendor. But there was a general consensus that it was certainly nice to have the same vendor, and we do work closely. And when the town has a problem, we use our influence wherever we can to help solve the problem, as we did when Calamonte opened one of their units and they were having trouble getting new bins for their units, part of a town contract, but we were able to go in and help throw some weight around and say, hey, you've got to fix this. So it's also, I think, pretty well understood that town's very favorable contract rates are largely influenced by the HOA contract, because it would be almost impossible for them to come for 300 people with a radically different cost structure, unless the service elements were very, very different. So I think the result is there, and I don't think there's any way to do it more formally. And also, I should add, as I keep I keep reminding people, we do have it's in our contract that our terms can be extended to the town, so to the rest of the town. So if the town were ever to want exactly what we have, because that's the deal, then they could always get that same agreement. So it's there. There's just various ways to accomplish it.
No, thanks for that update. All right, so are we good on that? Any more information questions from anybody? I think it's exciting. I'll be looking forward to seeing how that comes down. All right, so on to the next one, discussion on recommendations for the budget.
So I'll get this one started. So it's budget season. As you can imagine, as you've heard me over pretty much all year, every month is, or every season is budget season. The actual internal review committee starts meeting later this month to go over preliminary budgets that each of the departments here at the town have been responsible for assembling and submitting. So similar schedule that the town has, pursued in years past. I have a formal review internally among staff, and then a finance committee of the town board meets, usually starting in August and September. And then the board usually considers a final balanced budget in October, right around then, so that so that there's a little bit of room for board dialogue if it needs to be extended, or if there's additional items the board is interested in. But the board is statutorily required to have a balanced budget approved by the end of the calendar year, because it's a calendar year budget year. So the items that we've talked about in the past, I've tried to make some notes through the work plan process. The work plan included a couple of different items for this group to look at for potentially considering as budget requests for future years. So we can start with that, some of the items that have been looked at in the past. Remember, as part of the work plan for this year, the board was interested in hearing from this group on a couple of things. First one being dog park compost, the waste compost program. The budget for this, like we talked about, was going to be about $2,500. So if you think back to the fall, Rachel made a great presentation to the board recommending on behalf of this group the initiation of that program. It started in January, and there's been great results so far. So the folks who collected for us have tracked about 1,000 pounds. Yeah, about 1,000 pounds year to date. So even with some really rainy weeks in May, there hasn't been any week below 35 pounds. So the return for 1,000 pounds over 6 months, 2,500 pounds maybe a year, 3,000 pounds maybe for the year, for a $2,000 investment is kind of where we're at. So if this group is interested in recommending that be included in next year's operating budget to continue, that would be something to consider, number one.
I have a really, it's kind of off track a little bit, but a really awkward question about that. Like, how, it doesn't fill the bin much, right? Down there?
No, but it would be problematic if the bin were full.
Yeah.
Because it would be too heavy for the bin, just because of the density of the material.
Right. Because one of the things I realized, we never asked, like, what is the actual capacity of the bin? You know what I mean? Like, how much potential does that bin have to hold?
It's a toter, a regular kind of trash cart that is towed away and then replaced with one that has been emptied and then
clean and whatnot,
so it's not an empty, they take the full ones, or the ones that have material in them, and then drop a fresh one.
Because is there a concern about having increased, the reason I ask is, like, is there a concern about having to increase the budget because when it does really start getting used, it would be too full?
That absolutely is a concern, yes. Number one, we haven't had the service yet during a warmer month, because it's not been a warmer month yet. So when there is, we'll have a better indication on whether or not there would be a need for a second cart, and there absolutely might be.
I was just wondering if we should recommend maybe increasing it, as we go through things, putting sort of a contingency fund aside, just in case, I don't know how that stuff works. So that's one of the reasons I'm asking.
Well, it's going to take a couple of months to get through the entire budget process, so we'll hopefully have a chance between now and next month's meeting. Fingers crossed that there's some warm weather.
We can get a better picture.
Maybe have a better idea of what volumes are like during a warmer summer month. And absolutely, you're right, it might make sense to introduce a second toter, a second cart, and the vendor who provides this service for us and I have talked about, whether or not that might be necessary, and that's, contemplated as part of the town's agreement with the vendor, that if there is a need to have a second cart, then it could be added, but it would be an additional expense, yes.
Okay.
So how often do we publicize that program in the newsletter?
We put it in every month until we started using focusing on the bulk item discard and composting. So that would have been first 3 months of the year, and then the last 2 months, the information related to RCAC and sustainability related topics is focused on those two items.
Well, I mean, it's for the dog park, right? They're, on the trail or throughout the town, sometimes I do see people, not picking up I think when we, advertise that program alongside, maybe encourage people, make sure, remind people to also pick up their, throughout the town when they walk their doggy out. I just saw that yesterday. It was gross, big pile and a gross on it. So, yeah, I mean, the town provided the bags at the entrance of those trail, and then people should get used to it and then, use them. It's so gross. Especially with the rain and, it's just, wow. True.
Yes, Tanya, I think you're touching on a pretty common theme. I think all the jurisdictions around here, I occasionally see it in the paper and in different jurisdictions noting what a challenge it is to have people pick up after their dog.
I know, but we just need to get the message out there, reiterate, every time, once in a while, to remind people. Those are important for your neighbors, for your community, so.
Yeah. If it's possible to put a note in the newsletter, though, a little reminder about the dog park, it might be timely since people might, since more people might be using it over the summer, and we've had a bit of a lull with the weather lately.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, it's a good reminder. I'll have it on my newsletter list.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
So other budget items, so we'd probably recommend, obviously, continuing with the hazardous waste and electronics and all that. Pick up annually.
Pretty successful, actually.
Yeah, so you're touching on some of the ongoing programs, so I guess we can maybe so the water audit program is included as part of the waste diversion budget. It's coordinated through our Public Works Department. Waste contract is a separate item, so we've been involved with that. PACE program doesn't have any expenses associated with it. At this point, maybe an award. I'm not sure how the county's going to think about that. Water audit program is a carryover item from the first year. The yard waste facility
Budget?
has been a budget item that's been fairly consistent over the last few years. Material amounts have increased, but the budget's been, the overall line hasn't needed to increase because of the yard waste facilities expense. And the education programs that are coordinated with EcoCycle in the schools throughout Boulder County. There's a couple of programs that have been great here in Superior Elementary, and some other schools have been great to participate in. That's an ongoing budget item. And then the events, the household hazardous waste and hard to recycle event. We haven't had any expense with the shred event, which was great. And then a little bit of event-related expense with the sustainability corner at Arbor Day. More supplies that I tried to coordinate. And then the dog waste compost program. So those are really kind of the main planks of the waste diversion budget line. So some potential items to consider in addition to any carryover items would be maybe these other items. So, Michelle, you mentioned some of the ongoing programs like the Hard to Recycle events.
Well, we don't have to review those really, do we?
And, it's maybe some of these other ongoing programs, keeping the yard waste facility open. If there are any items that are currently contemplated in that budget that might make sense to either, rethink or expand or contract or do differently, obviously this is an opportunity to think about those and think about a recommendation to the board. But I haven't heard from this group or really from a board member or anybody from the community to do less of any of these.
Yeah, often though in the budget cycle, questions come up of how many people are using these things and what's the results and that kind of thing. So we just have to be prepared for that kind of questioning.
Yeah, there's been a matrix that my predecessor and the town manager and other staff members have worked on to try and track some of the overall or some of the global totals. And that's been great to have. We'll try to update that as we can.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that is part of my responsibility, but not always at the top of the...
I had a question on the items that to consider where is it now? Single can replacement with dual cans at all town facilities. We started that with the grant. And how much was the grant and how much did that cover of the town, or will that cover?
It's going to cover a portion, maybe 20%. Some of it's going to depend on the overall, how much value we can get for the installation. It's a $30,000 project with a $15,000 reimbursement from the county, which will be great. I have to check my files on where we're going to be. The committee were interested in recommending a capital project over a couple of years, and perhaps like a park furniture budget to replace the remaining ones. I'd have to check on the amount.
Yeah, that's where I was getting to.
It's considerable. If I remember correctly, we had about 96 total, approximately 70 that would be remaining to convert from one hole to two hole recycling. And they're about $1,100 a piece to purchase and install.
So it's
It
not,
would be a sizable budget amount.
it is a sizable amount. Is there extra labor involved with the picking them up then too, or?
Yes, there would be an additional, so the cost to install and have a base and a foundation, and then the cost of the can itself, and then the increased incremental cost to have weekly servicing by the town's vendor who provides that service to us. That's the Argus Landscape Company does that currently. So it would be a sizable potential capital expense, a one-time expense that would be a durable good like that. So it's absolutely something that this committee can consider recommending.
So we have a grant that will cover 20% of the 30,000.
He said 15,000.
So 50%.
It will cover.
But you initially did say 20%, so I was confused as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
20% of what needed to be done is being done.
Yeah,
Maybe
so
that's on one over here.
Okay.
Out of 100 or so, approximately 100 cans, we're slowly able to replace the ones through our maintenance budget as cans have either aged, broken, or just expired. As park furniture just expires at some point. We've been able to replace some, and if there are approximately 70 left to replace, this will do some of them.
So then we could possibly recommend a line item in the budget for a portion of it next year to kind of keep it rolling and not necessarily do everything all at once. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would need to figure out I'd have to check my files. I can now if you give me a second, but maybe for next month maybe have a little bit of detail. So it would entail, acquiring the cans and then budgeting time with either staff or a vendor to install them, and then the incremental increase in servicing those cans. So I'd have to work on that, what that number would look like going forward, and then have that as a potential add for the operating budget and capital budget.
That would be good, if you wouldn't mind, please.
How much are we saving with the shredded program being covered by, okay, there's no guarantee that'll happen every year,
But it did this year, so, yeah.
it's 2 years.
It started a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
that budget was used for some other increases, particularly the yard waste facility. The volumes of the yard waste facility continue to increase. So the savings that was realized by not having
Already
reached the shred
spoken
event
for.
have been absorbed by other programs.
So I've got a question. What kind of strategy are you using in deciding where to place the dual bins now?
The ones that are in worst condition and in highest volume locations,
Okay.
combination of both.
So we're thinking Purple Park,
Replace
or community park.
the older ones in the two regional parks, the community park and Purple Park.
Well, the community park by the field already has one, but it's not big enough.
Yeah, there needs to be an additional one there, and a couple more over there. Spreading across that field.
Nothing rather handle movie night.
But
That's cleaned up well, there's no question about it.
But that's
They do a great job cleaning that up.
They absolutely do, but that's kind of a funny thing, because you would almost think that somehow we could get Waste, whoever, or trash, I get confused, Waste Connections out to at least bring maybe like a big recycle, like a one-time recycle bin that we keep there for the summer or something, I don't know. That's a total pie in the sky thing, but maybe with your clout, Mr. Payne, you could twist some arms.
He can't make it stop raining for movie night, so.
Choose how to use your powers. That's funny.
Let's see. You bring all those bids out.
So I'll check on the cost, number one, for the capital, the upfront cost to install them, and then the ongoing cost to service them. And I'll have a little bit of detail for next month, but I'll include that as a placeholder in the budget that I'll submit.
So would you recommend continuing to have the placeholder then too for the shred event?
To pay for it?
Yeah, having a placeholder in the budget still, even though we haven't used it for that manner in the past 2 years?
I guess, we like to budget conservatively and assume that, the worst-case scenario isn't going to happen every year. In my mind, the worst-case scenario would be Data Safe and Guardian not wanting to partner next year. So I'd like to assume that prospectively that we will partner and address it if it comes up.
Okay, I agree.
So on the curbside organics, which is the next bullet under there, the special event, you might, if you get a number from a bidder on the RFP, you might have a good idea of what that'll cost and if the board wants to pay for it.
Yes, absolutely.
Is that different from number 3 in the third quarter?
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
No, it's the same thing. I think they arose out of different dialogues. I think I was noting the budget recommendations, and then the committee as a whole was considering whether or not to have one, but I wanted to have it as a placeholder for budget.
Oh, yeah, because then we were hoping that, if something came out of it, then we'd be able to go ahead and promote it in the fall. So those are more like what's going on that quarter
More of a
items.
outreach, because it would happen in the third quarter if it were to happen.
Yeah.
And if this group is interested in recommending to the board to have one this year, even though it might not be budgeted, just to...
Yeah, especially who knows where we are with the budget. That's a good point.
Yeah, we should.
I'm sure it's
review that.
tight, but...
Budget is tight, yes.
Yeah.
It always is.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have a note to include for next month's dialogue, a little bit more detail on the cost of the cans for the the waste cans to replace with the waste and recycling. And then I'll have a placeholder in the budget that gets submitted for preliminary review, and then we can tweak that, or I can ask the finance staff to tweak that going forward. And
So when should we plan on having our budget recommendations completed then? Next month?
well, you don't have quorum tonight, so it can't be an official recommendation. So it's going to kind of have to bleed over into next month, which isn't...
But we have to submit it then, you know what I mean? Because
It would be
otherwise we'd miss the cycle.
From a staff perspective, yes, it would be optimal to have this committee make a motion and then pass a motion for X, Y, and Z, whatever that looks like.
All right, so I think we're kind of finished with that topic for tonight. For everybody that's continuing, and even if you're not continuing, then you can send us your feedback.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please.
One thing I bring up every now and then, I guess it's not in the work plan, and I don't know whether it would be a budget item, but that's xeriscaping. And, the HOA, and everybody thinks we're not, but we actually are very supportive of xeriscaping.
Rebecca Xeriscape.
And the RCAC sponsored an event a few years ago, which wasn't well attended. I attended it, but it was like day before Easter Sunday or something, and just a bad time. But I think something like that is worth doing, and that's one area where the HOA can cooperate on, drumming up support for it, and we can use it to help explain to people what the HOA guidelines are regarding xeriscaping. So anyway, I just keep encouraging you to think of that, because that's something we'd like to see. But it occurred to me that it might be interesting, and would sort of fall in with that under this group, under the conservation part. We're doing a lot of, we're working closely, the HOA is working closely with the town. Now, this is Parks and Rec, but what I have in mind might tie in with xeriscaping on updating our tree guides and tree information and all of that kind of thing. So it might be interesting to tie in xeriscaping with this, and the town's getting ready to publish a new tree guide that has information about the best species and all that sort of thing. Might be interesting to have an event around that ties in xeriscaping and trees, have town expertise on hand, HOA, just a thought.
No, I think it's actually, it's funny, it's what was going through my head too, kind of during the time, and I don't know what everybody else thinks about it, but I would like to see one of these things be in the fall. I know that sounds almost ridiculous, but it helps you as a homeowner or whatever, be able to plan financially to be able to do the things.
Well, I've actually, for a lot of things, it's actually better to get them established, plant in the fall.
Well, it's good.
Their roots grow over the winter, and then come spring, they're much stronger. I've had much better luck with perennials.
Anything you planted in the fall?
Planted in
God, that would be awesome.
Our summers are so hot and harsh.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we can throw together an event that quick.
Well, maybe we could partner with like the chili event or something. Is that in the fall? Or am I-
Yeah, September.
Chili Fest, so I think it's September 12th issue.
Yeah,
And obviously, the tree thing, the ideal thing to tie it in would be Arbor Day, but I see this as, I think that it might be more interesting to have a special event with xeriscaping and trees. There's a lot of information that people would really like to have. I think the response to this tree initiative is going to be very, very positive. People really need that information. And and it would take some time to prepare for it, so you wouldn't want to do it too soon. But
Yeah,
if you want to pursue it, the HOA would love to.
like in fall, did you do it like around the September or October timeframe?
We did it in October.
October.
That's when all the plants were half the price.
Okay, so like, it's another naive question, can like that kind of activity show up in the HOAs or like Oktoberfest or something? Is it like not good?
Well, you'd use those events to publicize it, not tie in with it, which would be a good way to...
What I'm saying, make a presence, because that's a popular event, and a lot of people show up.
To do small scale one?
I'm kind of, I mean,
We've had,
I think...
one of the reasons that, the HOA, we got interested in this, and we're very excited to find out that coincidentally, the town had also had put some new effort into it. They were using Alan Macbeth, who was the superintendent for Parks and Open Space. You know, he left 2 years ago. They brought Alan back to consult on this. Alan has consulted with Patrick's staff on preparing this tree guide. And Alan is an arborist. He's a very good arborist, and he knows the trees in this town very well, and what grows and what doesn't grow. So there's just so much information that we can impart that I just think people would really love it.
I'd love to have trees that didn't get killed every year by the spring snowstorm.
No, I think that's great, so we'll definitely put that on the topic list for next month and kind of come up with a little bit more of a formal plan.
A homeowner who had a side, what they call a side yard, which is a yard sort of on the other side of his fence on a corner lot that runs for quite just 60 feet. And what we're trying to do is when a resident has control over that land, we try to cooperate with the town so that the residential side yards blend in with the town. Town also has some of that space along the roads, you know. So we try to use the same kind of red quartz rock if they're putting rock mulch. We're trying to give them advice on the trees, and this guy was going to put in like fruit trees that would have had 30-foot, canopies against this fence and on the sidewalk. And we were able to say no. We directed him to columnar trees. He only needed 2. We convinced them through town expertise that 3 would probably shade out in the middle, 1 would die anyway. I mean, so this is the kind of thing we were trying to get to the residents, so.
Okay, well, no, we'll definitely put that on the topic for next month and maybe come up with a plan for this year, which would be a smaller scale one, but get it rolling, because the xeriscape is definitely in there somewhere. I know we have it, and
Yeah. Does the town have particular plans, town or HOA, to any particular strategy, changing the strategy around trees where we have had a lot of loss?
Well, the town's had some great experience, positive and negative, with all different kinds and species of trees. Some have worked great in different areas, and like Jim mentioned, there's been some that have been, maybe haven't been the best species for that particular microclimate or that location. So helping people make good choices depending on where they are is always a great benefit, and the town's had a chance to share some of that information and work with Jim and the HOA to assemble some information that we're going to try and distribute in conjunction with the HOA.
Yeah, my question is more like, say along Rock Creek Parkway, along the median, I think there's a fair number of dead trees. What sorts of plans are being made to work with those areas, possibly with some kind of different species or something other than trees, or?
I guess I've had this conversation with a lot of people. I don't know if I've had it with this group or not over the last few months. So we had some very particular environmental and weather circumstances over the last year that have resulted in a significant amount of desiccation and loss of trees along some of the medians. A lot of them have browned out, and the ones that are going to come back have come back, and a lot are going to need to be replaced for a number of reasons. The really unique weather we've had over the last couple of years, and the really late hard freeze we had in the fall after such a stressful growing season with the heat over the last couple of years, resulted in some trees that were weaker not making it through. So there's going to be a significant amount of loss, and that combined with the fact that a number of those trees are 20 years old, which is kind of the life cycle for evergreens in that environment, has led to a lot of trees just needing to be either removed, replaced, but having some different species is absolutely going to make sense.
So the deep freeze, that sudden freeze last fall, has killed a lot of trees. That's one of the reasons why we got this initiative in the first place, was because a lot of people have problems, they get trees to replace. And then, for example, people see the trouble we've had with some of the evergreens and the medians and so forth, and then if they go out on their own without proper advice, they'll just avoid evergreens. But it's the long needle ones that are the problem, not the short needle ones. So, and the other thing which is fascinating, which I won't go into now, but there's a new web source that Broomfield and some of the other towns are on that we're looking at, or the town is looking at, which charts the population. They literally take a census of the trees, where they are, what kind of tree. And that way you can begin to try to affect the proper balance of the mix of trees in the town of Superior, in our case, in the parks, and to the extent that we can do it through information to residents. So, I mean, it's a fascinating thing when you see what Broomfield has done with their charting their tree population, and we would like to do the same thing here.
Yeah, it's a great project that the Pros Department, Parks Rec Memphis Police has been working on really since the fall, trying to figure out a way to include that. It was part of the reason that Ellen Macbeth was brought back as a consultant for a few weeks, was to try and help us with some of that, just indexing of what the different species are. So it's an area that's been, I think, ripe for some attention, over the last couple of years, and between the advances in technology and making some of the GIS technology a little easier to use to actually map what's where and share that information, and trying to do stuff more regionally and just share some of the best practices. Like Jim mentioned, having some best practice information for homeowners that are thinking about what trees to replace, just like the town is, figuring out what a good species is for that particular spot. Realizing that we all have a lot of trees, homeowners and also the town, that are irrigated the way turf is, not the way a tree would be irrigated. So there's a number of variables for both the homeowner and for the public areas to consider. So like Jim mentioned, it's a great opportunity to do something collectively, and some of the work that some of the other arborists and other cities have done has been great. So looking for some opportunities to gather that information and get it out is a great idea. And if this group is interested in maybe having a presence at Chili Fest, that'd be great. So hopefully we'll have some information, and we can have a booth there. And it is September 12th, that Saturday after.
That's a good idea. That time.
Yeah, I have some ideas about that, and we can talk about it next month. I guess just one question is, if we wanted to have someone like Ellen Macbeth come and be a consultant, or have a presence, would there be a cost with that? And if so, who would pay for that, and, do we have budget for that kind of thing?
So there's I note up there, that third bullet is staffing resources. The time and energy that I can devote to this is minimal. So if there was an interest to have somebody like Alan Macbeth provide some additional arborist-specific information, or anybody who is related as a specialist in a field or a consultant who want to do something either on trees or on any sustainability-related task, they would need to have a budget, yes. There isn't a dedicated area of funds to allow. And it'd be something we can do in conjunction with the park staff.
Well, that's what I was going to say, a lot of this they're doing anyway, so it's more a matter of the HOA doesn't really have resources to put into it either. My thought was that if Parks and Rec is doing on the tree stuff, they're putting the tree guide out, they've got some ability to provide some resources, they have some program, they replenish, they're doing all this sort of thing. It's mostly in education and popularizing it and explaining to people what we have. So I think there may be some budget, but I don't see it as a major budget item. I don't see any reason for RCAC to get involved.
Sure.
Engaging consultants.
Okay, so then we can probably
Depending on what the
partner.
consultant's involved in.
Right.
Parks and Rec is working on assembling information, doesn't have a budget that entertains disseminating that information or really
Right.
serving as a conduit to actually go out and reach people, or even assemble something that could be even a mailer to send home to folks. So that would be ratcheting up that.
I understand that, that's my point. It would be more on the education and outreach, which is probably better done by this group than by, let's say, ProStack. It's not really a ProStack thing, even though this is a Parks and Rec program. But the popularization under the conservation aspect of RCAC would I think, be appropriate for RCAC and the HOA. And, we could work together. So, yeah, there may be some educational budget requirements. My impression is that the board would be very receptive to it.
Yeah, the board has generally been receptive to finding ways to amplify programs without necessarily adding additional staff, or depending on what any additional staff would be, what their responsibilities would be. So yes.
Yes, and we'll bring it up next month, and then hopefully be able to come up with some concrete stuff.
And like Jim mentioned, it wouldn't be a huge expense, and the board has generally been favorable in trying to find ways to include those in the budget, but it's not. Sometimes it's not always a given that it can happen.
And on the xeriscaping, the problem there is that the last thing the town needs is for people to use less water right now because of the rain. Seriously, the town, it's a major source of revenue, but again, my guess is that that's something that they will support. And again, I don't see that as...
Yeah, resource conservation is a goal of the town, but also maintaining the utilities revenue stream is also a goal, and they work in tandem.
I've used my sprinklers once so far.
Well, Patrick told me they haven't done a complete cycle.
Yeah, we haven't been able to even test all of our sprinklers yet, so that's why you're seeing some irrigation systems turn on at random times during the day. Even now in June, still having not had to get the entire system on at once. This is a unique year to see.
Yeah, it is. Fantastic.
So some good ideas.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're
Think
into the
about
state of
next month,
California.
Students might be interested in thinking about some ideas for Chili Fest. So I'll have
I'm sure we can get the,
the additional information on cans, and then a little bit more, some follow-up information on maybe some education and outreach ideas, and maybe think about something for Chili Fest next month.
Okay, so my last question, in closing that out, and it's kind of correlated, so next month, so this is Ann's last meeting. Thank you. And...
Next month, until there's somebody appointed, you're technically still serving on the committee.
Oh, okay.
So please feel free to come
Okay.
next month.
But
So it's sort of a soft landing there.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. So my question was specifically then, given that we officially have 3 spots open, she can come, obviously, which would be awesome. Do those not count against our quorum? Do you know what I mean? So if we have 3 vacant spots, technically, if we get 4 people here next month, we'll be okay being able to make recommendations?
It has to be 5, one more than half the members.
And
How many do we have officially on the thing? So I thought we had 7, so we have
No, I'm
different.
sorry, 7. Thinking I'm not.
Sorry, that's the reason I asked, sorry. Okay, so we have 7 spots, 3 vacant.
Suddenly, there's no questions.
You gotta look at the ordinance.
Bring that information with me tonight.
Look at the ordinance.
I also want to ask you, ladies, and others who didn't come, so initially, this meeting was like later in the day.
You'll never have
Rachel
people
was the-
appointed in time,
was the main
because there won't be interviews and...
force to pull this earlier because, all pushes are out. I think pull it earlier because this works with her when she get off for work, she can just directly come to the meeting. So I don't know if you would like to push this a little bit later. Do you care? Sorry, I was just asking them about the sidewalk question, about the meeting time. Because 5:30 to 7, it's kind of hard for me. It's
Like 5:30 is it's too early.
Yeah, it is a little bit too early. So initially, I think the meeting was like a couple of years ago. It was scheduled like starting at 7, like the rest of like a Prostec, or the planning committee. So it's like around the 7 o'clock-ish. I think Rachel was the main like a pushing hand, I guess, to reschedule this early, because that works for her, for the, once she gets off the work, she could just come over here for 5:30, so, but I was just trying to ask everyone if do you guys ever care if we, push it out a little bit?
Change the meeting time to...
Yeah, change the meeting time to like maybe starting 7 to...
I'll be open to discussing it next month.
Yeah, I just want to raise the question so that people can...
Because I have a plan next month, just because we really have to have quorum next month to be able to get anything done, so I'm going to do my best to push people ahead of time, like, please, 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 try to make it next month so we can get a couple things through. Because I think discussions are great, but every so often we need to be able to push stuff through, so.
So it's not that these meetings aren't productive, but
Yeah.
the start time of the meeting could absolutely shift according to what works for the committee.
Yeah,
I mean,
but-
the time has been in different times over the years.
Yeah, but basically, I was saying, if Rachel if she's going to be interested in for the next term, then, I probably wouldn't even raise that question, but now she's not considering further reappointment, so I just want to ask everybody else if you care or if that's not going to work for you guys.
Yeah, why don't we talk about it next week?
Yeah, I think, I'm not saying...
I'm not sure 7 seems a little late. I don't know. Not that I'm like 90 years old or anything, but...
Yeah, just so, people can
There's
start...
just never a good time.
Yeah.
It's like we talk about what day to hold an event.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, we can definitely talk about it, and then people can start thinking about it.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
All right.
So Michelle, it would be great if you could help motivate some folks to attend next month's meeting so there can be quorum selection.
I'll do my best. It may involve bribery, I don't know.
Great treats next month.
Yes.
The summer months are always going to be tougher. We'll have vacation and travel schedules, and then we also happen to have the reappointment schedule at the same time. That's just the way the calendar worked out.
It just seems silly in some ways, though, that the people who aren't planning on continuing still count against us. I don't know, you know what I mean? Because Anne has no obligation to come next month. She might because she feels nice. But, it's like, those 3 spots count against us, and I'm like, that's not
It's not so much that
really...
they serve the issue, it's just that in order for a quorum to be met by the definition of what the group consists of, which is 9 members, it has to be one more than half.
Yeah.
So just because there's vacancies doesn't necessarily mean that.
I agree. It's just, and this is a weird thing, this is something that doesn't need to be discussed here, but as a quick note, when I first joined RCAC, I think there'd been 2 vacancies for over a year. And so I think it's kind of unfortunate that the language was written to kind of put us at a disadvantage when you can't fill vacancies. Just kind of as a side note, since we have a board member here.
Sure, so a quick follow-up item, so Joe mentioned it earlier, having a formal recommendation from this group is optimal. But if there's a smaller amount of folks and there's some general consensus on items, then obviously staff can work to convey that. through the town manager and the town board. But optimal is always going to be having a motion where everybody as a group can decide something either unanimously or by a show of hands where they feel the group is on a recommendation and recognize that individually. So
Okay,
yes. So
appreciate it.
I wouldn't want you to think that the meetings where there isn't quorum aren't beneficial, like the discussions from tonight, very beneficial regardless of whether or not there was quorum.
Yeah.
So everything's going to be iterative and set the stage for the next month.
Cool, thank you.
That was the idea, is that if you don't have quorum, you just pass, you can pass on a comment or recommendation to the board, but then just say quorum was not present. But
Yeah, I just don't want to be in a position where we're like this for a couple of years like it has been before, so that's kind of the only reason I was kind of bringing it up.
Well,
So,
yeah, the logic was that the board used at the time, when I was involved with that, was, and the other chairs were involved with it too at the time, was that puts the pressure on the committees to get their complement of people. Otherwise, there's an incentive to just let them get small and have a small number of people making the decisions. So,
Right, right.
So if there's not a quorum, you can still make your recommendation. That was the
yeah,
logic.
no, I agree. We just need to figure out a way to make ourselves more attractive because ProStack and all those other people have people vying for their spots all the time.
I've written myself a note a couple times. I'm going to put a star by it this time. Bring cookies next month. They have a great point. So there is going to be a tough balance between how big is too big and how big is too small, and what's the minimum for having an effective
Yeah.
group-based recommendation.
And as a side note, I love the emails that come out from the town about, reminding that there's vacancies and stuff like that. But it's funny because this is something I brought up before, but maybe just kind of in the sideways. We get dropped off when we don't have vacancies, but again, I would like to iterate that RCAC always has a hard time drawing people that are interested in this, so our name should almost really never drop off that list, because we always need to have a pool. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? So I know we just got added back on, but I was like, grr, why were we off
Well,
to
it's
start
not
with?
unless you were added back on or not added back on. When people call and generally have questions about what committees are available, or they're new to the town and aren't familiar with the groups, and they'll call. And me or another department head that they might be interested in, whether it's Patrick and Parks, or me regarding any of the committees or the town manager, we have kind of a quick synopsis of what the groups do. And we always invite people to submit an application, and we're glad to keep them on file.
I have no doubt that you do.
If I may,
I was gonna say, that's the plan, must always have
right.
applications on file and a queue.
All
And,
the other committees do.
I mean, they can't announce you have a vacancy if you don't have a vacancy. So that's,
The idea, which hasn't really happened, and Joe's right, was to always be recruiting for people that if they, so you have a backlog and you have names on file that are essentially pre-vetted, so that there's no gap. And that still hasn't.
it hasn't happened.
And it's a problem, but you're absolutely right, but that was.
And RCAC is, you're right, traditionally been,
I'm not trying to be weird, I'm just saying, there's some that are harder to fill than others, and so we would like to maybe recognize that.
Maybe we could look at the wording in the announcements.
That's not a bad idea.
And just see, when I see the announcements, I see what organizations or what groups are on there, but to be honest, I don't actually read the.
That's very good advice, Ann.
nice.
Do we say we're always looking for applications?
I don't know, that's a very good question.
Well, there's the periodic meetings that are there to take applications, and I don't know.
Open houses, the spring and fall open houses.
And whether you choose to keep a desk there and, or not, I don't know if you have in the past. And that is varying success too, because those are not overly attended always. But, selling what the committee does at those meetings, if people show up.
Yeah.
That's the big if,
It's okay, everybody's doing their best.
So you mentioned, and specifically having an RCAC-specific outreach item or an e-blast dedicated to this. And I started some text for one over the last couple of days, and I just haven't had a chance to get back to it.
Oh, interesting.
Somebody who's better maybe with flowery words will give me some assistance, or maybe have some graphics that are a little bit more eye-grabbing. But we'll try and send something out that's specific to this group. because like you mentioned, there is a pool of applicants for OSAC, PROSAC, and also Historical Commission this round. And the idea that Joe mentions and Jim mentions about having a pool of candidates on hand was a great goal, I think, at the time, but the operational reality that I've seen just in the experience I've had in this position over the last year and a half is that people who aren't selected after being interviewed aren't always interested in being considered again. There's been a couple of instances where there's been vacancies in the past, but some of that might be just incidental to that in particular individual.
Yeah, maybe you and I can have some talks about that this month, too. I mean, also the reality is maybe some of those pools from the other committees would be interested in serving on here. I did not apply for this committee. I was appointed to this committee for some reason. I don't know if someone thought it was a good fit.
I remember.
No.
You gotta watch what you
I was
say.
actually out of the country when I got appointed, so. But again, just like, if we could maybe even reach out to some of those, I might be happy to make some phone calls or something like that, too, just trying.
Yeah, so you mentioned the personal outreach. Some of the best candidates for all the groups that I've been associated with over the years have been somebody that somebody knows, or that somebody says, oh, I have a question about something, and they'll just call me or another staff member out of the blue. And those are oftentimes the best, longest-serving, most engaged members of any of the committees. Sometimes it just takes having a question or having a personal link or a connection with somebody. So if you have anybody and think that they might be interested, send them the email, send them the application, or maybe you just have them give me a call or have them send me an email. I'd be glad to give you more, so I'll follow up for you.
All right, thanks a bunch. Yeah, sorry, this went a bit longer than I'd hoped, but I think we had some good discussion. So on that note, I'm going to close the meeting because I need to leave.
Okay.
Bye.
I'll see you this weekend. Yeah. Well, I sent that in the email list, so if I can make it, I'll come. Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Yeah, you too. It's good to see you. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, thanks. Well, hope to see you again, man. Yeah. Well, not
It looks like the rain has stopped temporarily, but I can guarantee you it will start again because I'm about to light my grill.
I wonder if Lisa might want to read, might want to join the committee. Yeah. Maybe.
Thanks for coming in. Yeah, sure.
Jim,
Sure. That's just-
part of that education with,
You're going to get 4th of July. I didn't ask who's going to the 4th of July parade.
I think so, I usually do.
I think
part of education is you're escaping, there would be.
Oh, is it a parade?
Yeah, we always talk about the breakfast.
You've done 20 years ago,
Yeah.
2 times of bluegrass.
It's such a fun parade. That was great.
Yeah, it is fun. It's a fun time.
Well, that's what it is. By nature.
You're not having been in that department so
You know,
long.
if you're there escaping, you're replacing.
4th of July, and not having to keep my department.
Most people don't understand it.
I just drove a truck in the parade.
Yeah.
It was just one of those, it's okay, when you're not, you got school up on top, and
Right.
going,
So-
right. Well, it actually seemed like.
I don't understand. Then I look and say, oh, grass is in the sun.
No, it's so many.
I ain't doing it anymore, but now I'm getting tired of knowing. Especially this year.
The truth of the matter is, we have plenty of water, and
Yeah, we did.
use it or lose it, so it's not,
And that's a moneymaker for the town. I mean, we sell water.
right.
We make water and we have to sell it, or the utilities can be,
On the water, subject to water, when you planted the town, you guys did do another water tour.
Yes, I think it was,
Yeah, so trying to schedule it in August, the folks
If
in
you,
the water.
I'll mention this, because my wife was, said, key equipment is in that area, they're in the water facilities, finance, municipalities. And so, they would be interested in the town entertain that, and having some people go on that.
Sure. Yeah, that's all for
And
both years.
they would even be willing, and he said they'd probably be willing to pay for the bus or something like that. So if,
there's 6 on the bus, I don't know why.
Yeah, so normally it's been some staff members, the town board, and planning commission, and the summer before last.
Right.
The day before last summer. And Northern also offers public tours for anybody. I had the from a couple of weeks ago.
son
Yeah, it's a long tour to go all
Trailbridge Road.
But probably in August. Probably in August. We've been working with their staff. They have a number of jurisdictions to try and host in addition to hosting 2 other tours that anybody can sign up for. We're trying to isolate a date in August, and then it's a question of trying to get a core, a critical mass of board members.
Which is tough, Joe, which is.
August could be tough.
So keep that in mind. Yeah, I'll forward the, actually, I still have it in my email. I'll forward it to the flyer. They set up the public ones. It's not dated line when we send it out.
You know,